From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. More conversation this week about recidivism and ways to keep formerly incarcerated individuals from reoffending and returning to Alabama's already overcrowded prisons. The Alabama Commission on Reentry, known as Reentry Alabama, met Tuesday to discuss supporting former inmates in adjusting to life after incarceration. Alabama is one of 5 states in the reentry program, which aims to cut recidivism in half by 2030. During the meeting, Ronald McKeithen, reentry coordinator for Alabama Appleseed, emphasized the need for comprehensive wraparound services for former inmates.
We start visiting them. We start letting them know certain things that we're going to do for them. It's like, and then soon, and I love going up there to meet a guy when he comes out, because the first thing I'm going to do is hug him and say, "Which man is that? Hey, we got you." And that's when they know that we got you. And that's the way we deal with them, the way we treat them, the way we talk to them, the people that we introduce them to. We introduce them to people that's going to look at them like they're human. Because they have to deal with that so much in prison, like the staff, everybody's like mean mugging, looking at you crazy. The officers are trained to like believe that with your mouth moving, you're lying. But when you get in a vision and put them around people that they, not just by their words, by their actions, that they believe in this person, that we're going to support you, you'll see the changes.
I think from your end and your organization's end, you're going to have to advocate for more money for that. I mean, there's no question. I mean, they're already, DOC would know more than me on this, but you're going into the close to the $800–900 million range just on operating budget, and it's still nowhere near they need to be at. So I think that's going to be the key, is advocating. I don't disagree with you, because I think on the pardon parole side, we spend the bulk of our budget on it, but it's easier on us because we're not having to watch people inside, the perimeter every day. So I think that's where the difference is between my organization and theirs. But I see what you're saying. You raise a very valid point.
As Reentry Alabama works to reduce recidivism, one existing program is already showing great success. Capitol Journal's Jeff Sanders has more.
At first glance, this may seem like an ordinary job fair, but this one is held behind razor wire fences.
When you look at people who are formerly incarcerated, what do we want them to look like when they go back into society?
Cam Ward, director of the Alabama Bureau of Pardons and Paroles, is leading efforts to help the formerly incarcerated transition back into society. In partnership with Ingram State Community College, his department launched the PrEP Center at the Perry County Correctional Facility in 2022.
We have not had a single person to date in the last few years commit a crime again. And I think it shows that a person with a good paying job, a skilled working job, that's a good employee, that's what we all want for everybody. And I think it's showing that it reduces, crime, it helps with public safety, but it's a key component to making sure someone's successful in life.
The 90-day program offers participants mental health support, substance use disorder treatment, education, and workforce readiness training.
We've offered them skills and abilities, skills for success training in fiber optics, tree trimming, forklift certificate, heavy equipment operator, carpentry, and electrical. And with those skills, trade skills, we're hoping today that they get a job.
Joseph Goodwin is one student eager to put his newly acquired skills to use. He dreams of one day opening his own home construction company and credits the PrEP program not only for teaching him valuable trade skills, but for also helping him become a better person.
Just how to be more positive and more focused on the self that I am, the inner self, instead of looking at the outside of what other people might think of who I was, and basically being able to be myself.
The PrEP program now plans to expand to include a new initiative for women in Clark County, aiming to equip former prisoners with the skills and hope they need for a brighter future. Reporting for Capitol Journal, I'm Jeff Sanders.
We are still 5 months away from the next legislative session, but this week we got some updated budget numbers that give us an idea of what lawmakers will be working with in the 2025 session. It looks like for the 3rd straight year, Alabama lawmakers will have surplus funds to spend in 2025. That's because in both the General Fund and the Education Trust Fund, revenues are exceeding what was budgeted in the last session. In the General Fund, revenues exceed projections by 7.6%, and the ETF is 1.2% through the month of August. Exactly how much extra money will be available in the supplemental spending bills is unknown. However, we do know that in the general fund, excess revenue will first go towards the prison construction projects and the new state house projects. And in the Education Trust Fund, as much as $50 million could be needed for the education savings accounts enacted through school choice legislation passed in February. Alabama's Medicaid rolls have decreased by more than 250,000 people over the last year. Medicaid, of course, is the state-sponsored health insurance program for the low-income, disabled, and children. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government prohibited states from removing those no longer eligible for Medicaid from the rolls. Starting in June of last year, Alabama and all states began a process of what's called unwinding, culling the rolls to remove those no longer eligible for Medicaid coverage. That could be from earning more income or moving out of state. Over the course of a year, 278,238 Alabamians were removed from the Medicaid rolls. That number nationally was more than 25 million removed. Now, about 1.1 million Alabamians remain in the Medicaid program. One issue we expect to come up in the next legislative session is crime, and specifically ways to reduce gun violence in Alabama cities. State Representative Philip Ensler says he's bringing back legislation that would prohibit the sale and use of so-called Glock switches that can turn regular pistols into automatic weapons, already illegal in every state. Montgomery County Sheriff Derek Cunningham hosted a demonstration this week at a shooting range to demonstrate just how dangerous these devices can be.
And we're pleading for you all. We need your help. You just saw what it does, and that's what these people are calling about. I just don't want people to keep muddying the water trying to make it sound like that this device has a place on our streets. It doesn't.
I think what a lot of people don't understand is just how dangerous it is to shoot a Glock that functions that way. I can tell you from a tactical standpoint, I am not going to carry any firearm that has a device like this on it.
And I cannot go to a neighborhood meeting without residents coming up to me expressing that they're hearing these and seeing them in their neighborhoods. The most heartbreaking was a mother who came up to me who said that she lost her son to a Glock with one of these switches on them and just pleaded with us to do something on the state level.
I know you're going to hear a lot about what these devices do. This has nothing to do with your constitutional rights. This is all about destruction. Now we're coming to the legislature asking for assistance to prevent this from coming back into our neighborhoods. So I think what you all seen today, you know how we feel in law enforcement about this type of device being on the streets, knowing that we got our loved ones, our deputies, our officers pulling over cars, knowing that people can get out of a vehicle with these type of devices on a weapon. No.
Governor Kay Ivey this week joined hundreds of Northeast Alabamians to break ground on the state's first Challenger Learning Center in Etowah County. Designed to support Alabama students with big dreams, the center will feature a space simulator and learning hub for middle and high school students, offering them cutting-edge opportunities.
Alabamians love a challenge and they rise to it. That is evidenced by the strong embrace STEM education has received and continues to receive throughout Sweet Home Alabama.
More opportunities to do things that are hands-on, where they see the intrinsic meaning, and where they feel like they're learning something that they can apply for a possible career. So could be very exciting for a lot of young people, and there will be thousands of kids who will come through here in the future.
A major accolade for an Alabama utility. Southeast Gas, a natural gas provider headquartered in Andalusia, has been recognized as one of the nation's top 20 utilities by Site Selection magazine. The utility serves 14 municipalities in the southeastern corner of the state.
When you provide jobs for communities, then that brings infrastructure, that brings revenue, that brings people into the school systems. Everyone benefits. And our mayors, our town, I have 14 mayors and council members that are my bosses. So they recognize that, when you're growing their community, everyone's better off. And so gas utility, just like electric, we work together. We don't argue with the electric. We had a good discussion with a president of a power company several years ago. He made the comment, said, we may argue about rooftops when we get the load here or the industries here, but let's all get it here first.
And so having them so interested in the economic development side and assisting us is just a big deal, especially some of the smaller cities, like Ozark. We have two full-time staff people that focus on economic development with the gas board. One is kind of on the industry side and one's more of a retail side. And they help us with small projects, like we have some retail strategy type companies that we deal with where they help us on a day-to-day and trying to recruit small business. And of course, on the larger scale too, it really helps us a lot.
The November election is just 45 days away. And while Alabama may not be a swing state, several important elections are on the ballot. That has Republican and Democratic leaders organizing their campaigns and preparing to get out the vote. Randy Scott has that story.
Electricity is in the air as the days to the November elections count down, and many people are excited about it.
It has been extremely busy, getting ready for the November elections. The Republican Party is committed. We're all together, we're united, and we're working hard to prove to the people of Alabama we deserve their vote this November.
Alabama Republican Party Chairman John Wall says the GOP hit the ground running, starting with fundraising events.
We've had 2 record fundraisers in 2023. And so for this year, we wanted to turn our dinner into a fundraiser for Donald Trump. And we raised over $1 million last week for the president's campaign.
The Republicans aren't the only ones excited about the elections.
Who will carry out the assignments of the people? Who will govern on behalf of the American people is exciting.
Alabama State Senator Kirk Hatcher got a taste of excitement attending the recent Democratic National Convention. He says he's taking that energy to the citizens to inspire them to get involved with work, including fundraising.
These campaigns are expensive. I've heard the numbers that individuals have mentioned as it relates to what will likely be spent in this campaign between the 2 individuals running, and it's astronomical. It's astronomical.
Elections, both nationally and right here in Alabama, would take place in a few weeks, and between now and then, things are about to get interesting. Both Democrats and Republicans do agree on one thing: citizen participation, both from a fundraiser standpoint and a volunteer standpoint, will play a big part.
The public is engaged. The grassroots of the Republican Party are incredibly excited and ready to get engaged in this process as we head towards November 5th.
Dealing with, healthcare, education, social justice. They are very strong on that, very passionate about it. So from, canvassing and phone banks and all the things grassroots.
In Montgomery, Randy Scott, Capital Journal.
Some sad news to report this week. Former state Senator Priscilla Dunn, a Democrat from Birmingham who spent more than 2 decades in the legislature, died on Tuesday following a long illness. She was 80 years old. Congresswoman Terry Sewell took to the House floor to offer a tribute.
Senator Dunn was a true public servant. As a school teacher, as well as a Sunday school teacher, she was definitely guided by her abiding faith, and she always practiced what she preached. On a personal note, I was blessed to have known Senator Dunn and her wonderful family. As Alabama's first Black Congresswoman, I stand on the shoulders of amazing leaders like Senator Dunn, who opened the doors for me and many others. She was a grand dame whose footsteps we, as Black women elected officials in Alabama, are blessed to follow.
Coming up after the break, I'll be joined from Washington by Stephen Boyd to talk about the ongoing budget negotiations that are taking place to avoid a federal government shutdown. After that, Jay Reed of the Associated Builders and Contractors of Alabama joins me to highlight the construction boom that is happening in Alabama and boosting our economy. And later in the show, Mark Colson of the Alabama Trucking Association is in studio to celebrate Truck Driver Appreciation Week. Stay with us.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. We are coming up on the end of the fiscal year, and that means all eyes are on Washington as Congress must reach a deal to fund the government by the end of the month. Joining me now to talk about that and other issues in the nation's capital is Stephen Boyd, a longtime Capitol Hill veteran, former Assistant Attorney General of the United States, and now partner at Horizons Global Solutions. Stephen, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Todd.
As I mentioned, we're at the end of the fiscal year. We're approaching it. And it seems yet again, we're looking at Congress coming up right onto the deadline for funding the government by the end of this month. Can you give us kind of the lay of the land of what we can expect in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. We're back where we usually end up at the end of the fiscal year. Congress has failed to do its job in terms of passing annual appropriations bills. In the House, I believe 5 have passed. In the Senate, 0 of 12 have passed. So without a continuing resolution, which is a stopgap measure to keep the government operating, technically, the government would shut down on October 1st of this year. What we have ahead of us is entirely predictable, in my opinion, but there were a couple of wrinkles in the last few weeks as we approached the passage of a CR, one of which was a desire to add an unrelated provision called the SAVE Act, which would require proof of citizenship to register to vote. And the other was a push to extend the CR much further into the future than usual. The typical case would be a few weeks or a few months to get past the election. Some in Congress wanted to push it into as far as March, in the idea that if Donald Trump wins re-election, he would be able to come in and influence spending in the new year. That was really a non-starter with Democrats, some Republicans. The SAVE Act was definitely a non-starter with Democrats. In the end, Mike Johnson, the Speaker, who's been in a tough political position, frankly, since he walked in the door of the office, was unable to get the votes to pass that version of the CR this week, and now is most likely going to move towards a short-term clean CR that moves the spending deadline into December, post-election, and Congress can deal with that when the dust settles.
So just for our viewers' understanding, CR, continuing resolution, basically that means extending current spending levels, however they were passed originally. I don't even remember what spending levels we're even talking about, but extending current spending levels another 2 or 3 months into December. So that kind of kicks the can down the road. What I found interesting about that vote, because you're right, it came up short, and there's such a slim majority for Republicans in the House, but all Republicans weren't on board. And what I found interesting was our own Congressman Mike Rogers, who chairs the House Armed Services Committee, very influential member, voted against that bill. And I found that interesting. Is there any indications of why he was opposed to it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he was very clear. He said he would be okay with the CR, but not if it goes deep into next year, into the spring. And the reason for that is a CR, while it is good in that it keeps the government operating, it ties the hands of government managers and our leaders who are trying to change and adapt to current circumstances around the world and at home, and particularly the Department of Defense. CR is so damaging to their ability to respond to challenges. And if you just think about what's going on with China, what's going on with new technology, AI, is trying to stand up Space Force and respond to challenges in space, not to mention hotspots in Europe and the Middle East. To tell Department of Defense managers that they can't fund new programs or change funding to adapt to those challenges is like playing with one hand tied behind their back, frankly. China doesn't have continuing resolutions. They're not worried about these sort of things. They're pressing ahead every day to grow their strength and to raise tensions in the Indo-PACOM region. And we've got to be able to respond. Mike Rogers, the chairman of Armed Services, makes total sense that he would stand up for the DoD in this respect. And he was clear about it, and he voted no when he had to.
It's interesting because they spend so much time working on the defense appropriations bill. They spend so much time, especially on the National Defense Authorization Act. Hopefully that's, I know it's through the House, but maybe it'll pass by the end of the year. So it's got to be frustrating for somebody like Chairman Rogers, who has put a lot of energy into, like you said, adapting and trying to update where our spending levels need to be. That's the job of Congress. So I can understand his frustration in saying like, oh no, we're just going to continue the same spending levels without those changes, without those updates.
Yeah, that's right. And, to his credit, he said so early on in the process, and many people agreed with him. He voted no. He's going to have, I think, a bill before him, a CR, as the rest of the House and the Senate will soon in the next week. That's a straight CR. No one wants to be in a CR situation. They much would prefer regular order. That has proved very tough in recent years, and frankly, it's been a long time since regular order on appropriations and federal spending has seen the light of day. We always find ourselves in this situation. It's not that uncommon in election year, but what was uncommon was trying to push it so far into the future. Another issue that's out there on the defense side is the National Defense Authorization Act, which Chairman Rogers is playing a key role in as chairman. That bill needs to be passed by the end of the year. It's been passed every year for 64 years, I believe. And I think this year will be the same, although it might go down to fairly deep into the December timeframe. But Chairman Rogers, his counterpart on the Senate side, Chairman Reed from Rhode Island, have a mutual respect for each other, work very well together, and I believe they'll be able to get that job done before the deadline strikes.
It's interesting what you say about Senator Reed, Chairman Reed, obviously a Democrat from Rhode Island. Democrats have a slim majority in the Senate, because from the outside here, it often just seems that Republicans and Democrats are just hopelessly divided, especially in Washington. But it sounds like what you're saying is there's some common ground, especially when it comes to national defense.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there are other issues where there's a lot of common ground also. It helps when you take the cameras off and let people talk like real people behind closed doors and find common ground and work through those solutions. This has been a historically unproductive Congress by, I think, any measure. Just purely the number of bills produced is quite low, but there are areas where members can come together, and I think national security defense typically remains one of those. The defense bill this year was, like last year, threatened by a number of what we'll call just social warfare, cultural issues that typically are not found on defense legislation. Chairman Rogers has done his best to keep the committee and the Congress keep the eye on the ball as it relates to meat and potatoes defense issues in the legislation. And I think there certainly are plenty of those. And I think that when we see a final product in December, that they will deserve praise for what they're doing right now, because the way this process will work is starting later this month and into October, their respective teams will be together behind closed doors, working through the different provisions in the House and the Senate legislation, reconciling those differences, negotiating out those differences. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a good product.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. And there's not a lot of encouraging news out of Washington. It does sound like, or seems like that, yeah, everybody's kind of waiting on the election. A lot's kind of riding on that. And I want to get to that a little bit later. But it sounds like what you're saying is there's going to be a deal one way or the other. It may not be the best policy, but the government probably won't shut down. It sounds like maybe folks shouldn't be too worried, but the real decisions are down the road after the election.
Yeah, in so many ways, when you get this close to an election, certainly a contentious one like the one that is just around the corner, um, Congress takes a view of doing the bare minimum, punting the big issues till after the election to a lame duck situation where, frankly, anything could happen depending on the outcome. And then members are eager to get back home before their voters, particularly in the House and in those Senate seats that are contested. Being stuck in Washington late in September and October, right before a November election, is not a good feeling for members that are on the ballot. They would rather be talking to voters back home.
Yeah, they got a campaign too. A lot of them do. All the House members do, and I guess a third of the Senate has to campaign too. So,
Right.
look, I wanted to ask you about this because I saw we were actually planning on being in Washington this week, but we just couldn't swing it. We're probably going to plan for a later date to go up and talk to some of our senators and House members. But I did see that a lot of folks from Alabama were in DC this week. I mean, I just saw on social media all kinds of different groups. I saw that Helena Duncan, president of the Business Council of Alabama, spoke to the Alabama Business Coalition there, and I think Senator Britt was involved in that. Talk about that. Folks from Alabama groups coming to DC to, I guess, to have meetings with their senators and their representatives. Talk about why that's important in terms of staying engaged. Not just sitting back home and making phone calls or sending emails, but actually having a presence in DC with their elected leaders.
Yeah, that was a great event on Wednesday morning. It's on Capitol Hill with the U.S. Capitol as a backdrop. Packed house, frankly, turned up to see a panel discussion. Katie Britt spoke at length about economic development, about workforce development, about business issues facing the state, how to position our state as a leader in so many ways, and it was very well received by the crowd there, as you'd probably expect. The group is frankly an impressive array of folks who both live in Washington or live in Alabama, but have an interest in Alabama economic issues, and particularly how those issues are impacted by federal decision making. When I was a chief on the Hill, I used to say quite a lot, we can't solve problems we don't know about, and we don't know about them until our people tell us about them. So the dialogue back and forth between, citizens, organizations, constituents, and their respective leaders in Congress is really, really important. And it works best when there's a degree of trust, and it works best when it's a consistent flow of information and everyone's swimming in the same direction.
Yeah, and I visited with the Alabama Business Coalition when I was there. It's really interesting because it's a kind of informal. It's not like they're voting to take policy positions. It's not partisan. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's just kind of focused on Alabama economic issues and things like that. I find that to be an interesting development. It would have been nice to have that, a decade ago when we were, both working on the Hill. Let me ask you about this. Like we've talked about, it's an election year. There seems to be so much riding on November, a lot of emotions, a country very much divided. But I want to kind of get a more practical. What do you see from Congress policy-wise that actually might impact real people in terms of the outcome on this election? From your perspective, understanding you have a lot of experience on this.
Yeah, well, there's a lot at stake, obviously, but by far, in my opinion, the easy answer to that question is taxes. The 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act was passed in 2017. It was arguably one of the biggest changes to the tax code in 20 or 30 years. It was very popular. A lot of those tax provisions expire in the coming year, and there will be an effort next year to revisit that issue. And the questions are pretty simple. Do we keep the lower taxes? Do we change them? Do we reform them? And it'd be hugely impacted by who's in charge, whether at the White House, in the Senate, and in Congress. And it's an issue that impacts everyday Americans. The tax changes could impact individual tax rates, small business taxes, et cetera. And I think the Trump campaign would be wise to stop talking about Haitians and this whole thing with the pets, or complaining about Taylor Swift, and start talking about what they're going to do with the tax code, because that's what impacts the center of the electorate. And that's where the election we'd won or lost.
Well, yeah, it's crazy you say that because that wasn't really on my radar. I feel like I'm pretty well informed and follow things, but I haven't heard much at all about the tax cuts expiring and how that's going to be impacted by the election. So yeah, I mean, they're talking about seemingly everything else, but that seems like a big one, taxes and how we go forward on this. It's going to be a really close election. We're obviously going to be following it. But Stephen, we're out of time, but thanks again for coming on the show. You've got, such a great perspective as a Capitol Hill veteran, but also so plugged into what the Alabama delegation is doing. We're going to have some conversations with them in the coming weeks as we approach the end of the fiscal year. But again, thanks for coming on the show. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Appreciate it, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is Jay Reed, president of the Associated Builders and Contractors of Alabama. Jay, thanks for coming on the show.
Man, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, we're talking about the construction industry. So I wanted to ask you, could you remind our audience about ABC and its role here in the state?
Yeah. Again, thank you for having me to talk about something that I am very passionate about. But Associated Builders and Contractors, it's basically going to be a chamber of commerce for commercial builders only, not residential. And we tend to represent somewhere between 530, 550 members across the state. Those guys are ranging anywhere from billions to your guy that's just getting started out in a trade and opening his own company. And we just try to be there for them in safety, workforce development, governmental affairs, and then networking and getting word out about their businesses.
A trade association, because we have several, many here in the state of Alabama. We've got a pretty big construction project going on, across the street with the new State House. So we're really excited about that.
Definitely, I'm gonna have to go over there and see my friends. That's my kind of world across the street. Let's get it built.
Well, it's fascinating to see it come up. We talk about it all the time.
I love it, man.
Well, one of the reasons I want to have you on, y'all have recently done this economic study. Some eye-popping numbers. $17.2 billion, kind of an economic boom. We'll get to some of the specifics later, but why did y'all do this? Why did you commission this economic study about the construction industry?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. When I come to Montgomery, I hear a lot about what I'm going to call the usual suspects. We know those trades. They're out there. They're flashy. They get the glitz and the glamour. But we sort of thought, let's pause and beat our own chest. $17.2 billion in Alabama. That's an important number, and we wanted it to resonate from those individuals wanting to get into construction. We're a great career, great wages. We'll get into that in a little bit. But we also wanted to know the people in our own backyard, right here in Montgomery, to know how important construction is. This is an economic engine that keeps the wheels turning in Alabama.
Right, and also kind of a canary in the coal mine, right? I mean,
exactly.
A huge economic indicator for how really the entire economy is going. All right, well, take me through this. What were some of the takeaways from this economic study?
Yeah, the employment numbers, 200,000 people in this state are employed in commercial construction. That's definitely up from the 2017 number. Another one is the commercial construction industry. We love our manufacturing automotive facilities. Commercial construction is bigger than all three of our largest commercial automotive, if you will, plants in the state of Alabama. So we're 17.2, and you got some of them coming in at 1 to 5 billion. Certainly it takes all of us to keep the lights on in Alabama, but for us to be bigger than all three of those, that was a key takeaway. The other one is just being a good steward of taxpayers' dollars. Our input into taxes alone could send every kid in Jefferson County K through 12 through school for 1 year. That's over $600 million in taxes. All of those numbers are just to say we're here, we're paying great wages, we're doing a lot for the families that work in construction, but we're also doing a lot for the state, and we wanted elected officials, governor's office, and others down here to understand that.
Well, what has been the feedback? Because this study's been out for a few days. I guess maybe it's got to get into the water table a little bit more, but when you have something like that, 17.2, the numbers you just talked about, what has been your feedback from lawmakers, from the governor, others that have been able to digest these numbers?
Well, certainly. Let's pick on the governor first, if you will. That office is just delighted to work with us. They understand if we have $17.2 billion that we're generating in the state, they understand that the commercial construction industry has needs, and they're quick to respond. They understand and they help other industries in the state. This has been one way we can say, you know, we might need a few things along the way. Craft training is a perfect example. This governor's administration has totally been locked in hand with us to bring back vocational trades into the state, to make sure the academies of craft training are first class. These numbers help us present that case, and the governor's been open arms and says we want more of it.
Yeah, they really have been workforce development,
very
heavy, really
strong,
kind of ahead of the curve a little bit. And then that's been a watchword here in the legislature too about, look, we've got to do something about the workforce participation rate. Got to get more students understanding at an early age, in junior high even,
exactly,
that there are these trades out there that can pay a lot of money, and your industry is a big one.
Man, right now, you hit on a good point. We're hearing that 3rd and 4th graders are influential. You notice you have a lot of other industries, they're doing these trade shows at schools. 3rd and 4th grade is when you can actually start speaking to an individual about skills in construction. You know, give them that hard hat, let them know construction is cool again, and hopefully we'll see them in the 12th grade at one of our academies.
You mentioned it being cool, and we were talking before we went on air about it is kind of cool again. And I'm sorry, when I watch these guys across the street, it does look like a cool job. Talk about the difference that makes in terms of the career in the trades and specifically construction being a sought after career.
Yeah, well, it goes back to years ago. We started a fund, Go Build Alabama, because we knew we had an issue. We have got to change the mentality of individuals and make them think of construction as one of those top careers. We were able to do that. Studies like this are able to do that, but all of a sudden you hear everybody that's gray hair talking about shop and Votech, and these guys have bought it back. We did advertising in high schools, football stadiums. You know, we just got in the right spots and just kept driving that hard hat home and driving that hammer home to say, pick us. Wages are here, benefits are here, and then sooner or later you can drive somebody by and say, hey, I built that state house.
Yeah, look forward to that.
Isn't that cool?
That is very cool. I mean, yeah.
We think so.
Absolutely. Look, every industry in this day and age has challenges. I'm thinking about inflation. I'm thinking about supply chain. We've heard a lot about supply chain and maybe how it kind of helped fuel inflation. How do those issues specifically impact the construction industry?
Yeah. Supply chain coming out of COVID was our worst nightmare. It was right there with workforce. We actually had a committee working on supply chain newsletters that we were getting out to our membership. Supply chain's buzzword, that's sort of toning down. We've turned the corner on that. We're down to just a few trades that are experiencing a lot of delays on supply chain. But man, I'm coming back to you on workforce, workforce, workforce. Okay. The whole message to this state, to a mom, to a legislator, to anyone that is watching this is think construction and pick construction. We need all of you here.
Wow. Now, let's just say you're out there as a parent or as a student, thinking about careers and things like that. Where's the place to go? Is it Go Build Alabama? You know, where can I find more information about?
Tons of resources out there. Go Build Alabama, certainly we have a link there. A great link now, Academy of Craft Training. Currently in our state, the governor and this legislature has embraced 3 campuses. We've got those in Decatur, Birmingham, and Mobile, and we tentatively will have 2 more over the next 3 years. We're certain that 1 more the governor's office is embraced, and we're working with elected officials now to get that 4th campus. But it's talk to a contractor in your area. They know where those opportunities are. They know where those jobs are. And by all means, all else fails, you call Jay Reed at ABC. We need the workers. We will get them employed.
Fair enough. Let me ask you about immigration. We are in this political year. And of course, immigration is all over the political, rhetoric and all this kind of stuff. There's all kinds of crazy stories out there. But I know that immigration is an important issue to y'all. What's the reality of it, and how does it impact your industry? What do people need to know about the facts of immigration and how it impacts the construction industry?
Regardless of what happens in November, we have got to have immigrant workforce. The aging workforce, the age of our people on job sites right now, and the people coming into construction, there are not enough for us to continue to be that $17 billion economic engine. either side of the aisle, whatever happens in November is going to happen. There has got to be level heads that prevail on this situation. Agriculture and construction's face will change if there is knee-jerk on either side of the aisle, Republican or Democrat. If we don't take a comprehensive look at the true number of workers that have got to be immigrants in this country and get that number right, all of the other cookies crumble. We've got to get this right, either side of the aisle. We were here in the legislature every time we've dealt with immigration. I will tell you this, both sides of the aisle understand the workforce needs in Alabama, and I just think level heads will prevail on this.
Yeah, lots of lessons learned. Well, I just remember 2011, 2012, lots of lessons learned from those days.
I was here with you.
We're almost out of time, but I wanted to get to another issue, and that is union votes. We had this bill, Senate Bill 231, talking about secret ballot elections. I know y'all were involved in this. It kind of came about as the UAW was making a big push at Mercedes and Hyundai and all that. That was sort of the bigger, I don't know, kind of headline. But I know y'all were involved in that, talking about ensuring secret ballots for union elections. Why was that so important to the construction industry?
Yeah. You know, we are a merit shop. We believe that contracts in construction need to go to the lowest qualified bidder, regardless of union affiliation. What we didn't want to support is public money going to projects that weren't in a secret ballot election. I can assure you, if we go upstairs in this State House and we talk to every legislator and we said, do you want 3 people in the voting booth with you when it comes down to what you are going to vote for your future, for your pocketbook, for your American way, for your American dream, they're going to want a secret ballot election. Well, we feel that the workers deserve that. We don't believe that there should be coercion. We don't believe that cards should be passed out and some of your buddies on the job site that you've got to be with every day are watching you vote. That needs to be between that man, that pen, and that pad, and he needs to vote the way he wants to vote without coercion, so let's do it secret ballot.
So you're pleased with that bill passing and the industry has benefited from that?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got to protect secret ballot elections when it comes to union affiliation. Let the workers decide and move on.
Well, Jay, thanks for coming in. This is fascinating stuff. And, you know, again, I'm glad you highlighted it because, we see construction all around all the time. We maybe take for granted the economic impact and the opportunities that are there for careers.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you coming in. We look forward to having you back.
Man, thank you. We'll be back as soon as session starts.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. This week is National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. Check out this short video tribute.
Hey Alabama, it's Governor Kay Ivey here, and today I'd like to recognize and celebrate the over 130,000 Alabamians who keep our state moving, our dedicated truck drivers.
Hey everybody, Lloyd Howell, Alabama's Professional Truck Driver of the Year. Just want to give a quick shout out to all the professional women and men across the state of Alabama and across the country. Just to let you know we appreciate what you do, the long hours and long days you put in to make sure our state and our country are well taken care of. Thank you guys, a whole lot.
Hi, I'm Senator Katie Brett. During Truck Driver Appreciation Week, I want to thank every Alabamian who is part of this critical industry, which literally drives our economy.
My name is Joe Black. I'm proud to serve as the current chairman of the Alabama Trucking Association. Please remember, as we celebrate the 37th annual National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, thank a truck driver and remember, if you have it, a truck brought it.
I'm Representative Kenyatta House of District 78.
Trucking has played a very important role for the city of Montgomery, for the county of Montgomery, and also the state of Alabama, and across this region in the United States. Trucking has had a big impact with my family, being diesel mechanics in the city of Montgomery. It has improved their lives, their quality of life has been better because of trucking.
Over 85% of our communities here at home depend exclusively on trucks to move our goods. That's why I proclaimed this week as National Truck Driver Appreciation Week in the great state of Alabama. So thank you, truckers. Your hard work will never go unnoticed.
This National Truck Driver Appreciation Week and throughout the year, we are grateful for our truckers. Thank you for your commitment to safety on our highways, and thank you for your willingness to act in times of crisis.
If you want to be a truck driver, go to mytruckingfuture.com and you have a great experience and a great life and a great career.
Thank you, stay safe, and keep on trucking.
And joining me next to talk about it is Mark Colson, president of the Alabama Trucking Association. Mark, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd. I'm excited to be here on National Truck Driver Appreciation Week.
Absolutely. Well, it's good timing, and I know that y'all have had some campaigns going on, a lot of interesting footage and graphics, and we'll get to some of that. But, you know, it strikes me, it seems like every industry has, you know, a week like this, an appreciation week for their sector and everything. What stands out as different about Truck Driver Appreciation Week in the trucking industry?
Well, we're excited that Governor Ivey declared this week in the state Truck Driver Appreciation Week. In 1988, during the Reagan administration, was the first National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. But what I think makes it unique is if you went on social media and followed all these great Alabama companies that are loving on their people, I mean, it is so special, and their families. I mean, whether it be at truck stops, giving away free meals, hosting dinners for them, hosting lunches for them. Because, you know, just being appreciated and saying thank you in our life, I think that's a great lesson in life for all of us, is just to simply say thank you. And certainly in the truck driving profession, that probably doesn't get said enough, especially for a profession in Alabama that represents, there's over 40,000 professional drivers in the state. There's over 130,000 people that work in trucking in our state. And, you know, that I think with every industry that calls our state home, trucking is the key link that makes sure that everything gets to where it needs to go safely. And so in every community, 85% of Alabama communities depend exclusively on trucking. So wow. that makes this week really special for us, because these are the men and women that are behind the wheel, that are sacrificing for their families and providing for their families and providing for their community. So we're pumped up about it.
Yeah, you know, it strikes me that we just take so much for granted sometimes that food is in the grocery store. You know, the things that we need are generally where we need them, when we need them. Most of that happens because of truckers.
Well, there's a lot of people, but it's one of those jobs that if it weren't there, if it didn't happen, if trucking stopped for a day or two, the whole world stops. We've seen what happens with the supply chain. I know you and I are going to talk a little bit about those dynamics, but it's just one of those professions. I mean, like teachers and law enforcement officials and all these important people that if they didn't do what they did, you and I wouldn't be able to live with the blessings we have in this life.
Yeah, well, let's talk about supply chain, because I remember going back to COVID, the trucking industry, I mean, they talk about some heroic work. They were facing risks, you know, health risks and everything, trying to make this country kind of get by in a really weird time. I remember seeing some images where the only vehicle on the road is a truck delivering stuff. It was just a very strange time. And that was when the supply chain issues started to happen, and it really played a role in inflation and things like that. Where are we now? Are we out of the woods yet in terms of supply chain? Because I know y'all are right in the middle of that, you know, situation.
It's still a major challenge. I mean, right now we're talking about port strikes in this country. You've seen that in Canada. You saw the Suez Canal blockage. You saw the LA port strikes with all the boats sitting out in the harbor. Yeah. All these different things have the bridge collapse. Yeah, I mean, all those things have an impact on our supply chain, and it really is that. It's all linked, and so for that reason, we're so sensitive to things that create cost in the supply chain, whether it be fuel prices or infrastructure pricing and costs, tolling, that kind of thing, lawsuit abuse and frivolous lawsuits. Anything that impacts any aspect of the supply chain has an effect throughout it. and all the way down to the consumer. So organizations like ours, on behalf of the men and women that work in our industry, are super vigilant on the many different dynamics that affect the flow of the supply chain, both in Alabama and around this country.
Interesting. We'll be following that, because you're right. It's a sensitive, a delicate balance that our economy depends on with the supply chain. Well, look, we're here in the State House. I know that you've actually today been traveling around, and you're on the road quite a bit with your member organization, your trade association. But we're here in the State House, and come session time, you're a presence here in the State House, talking about policy, talking with lawmakers. What are some of those policies that we might hear about that relate to the trucking industry now and into the next session?
Well, our number one priority in the State House and with every other policymaking body is to make sure those policymakers understand the men and women in our industry, like truck drivers, diesel technicians, the challenges they face every single day, and the companies that employ them as well. So without that level of appreciation, it's hard to take the next step and talk about some specific policy issue. So again, Truck Driver Appreciation Week is just another opportunity to highlight to our policymakers as well. This week we had Governor Ivey, Senator Britt, Kenyatta Hassel, all public officials that understand the impact of the trucking industry and the people in it, celebrating Truck Driver Appreciation Week. So when it comes to the State House, that's the first priority. The second one is any of those issues I talked about affecting the supply chain. So we're super vigilant on infrastructure, cost, and development. Like I said, lawsuit abuse, legal reform, that area impacts every industry but trucking uniquely, and it's all about fairness, and that's that area. But regulatory policy. So one of our biggest opportunities in the State House is to partner with law enforcement and our federal regulators, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, to make sure that we are working together to create safer roadways. And that's not a slogan for us in the trucking industry, especially our members that we represent. It's a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Safety is a lifestyle, something that we don't just preach and check a box. It's something that they live every single day, because we're talking about people getting home safely, both our folks and everybody else on the road. So that's something that's very important to us. And as we advocate here in the State House, that's something that we make sure we work with our partners like the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency on, because they're extremely important partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you talk about Governor Ivey, Senator Britt, Representative Hassel, and all the ones that are posting on social media. Does that resonate down to your membership, down to that truck driver? How do they, does that resonate with them?
It absolutely does. I got here today from Fultondale, Alabama. I was at the North Jefferson Chamber of Commerce talking to the mayor there, Mayor Slocum in Fultondale, and I just talked to the mayor. Talking to a policymaker, elected official, and the background, he was a firefighter, the background that he comes from, Kenyatta, Representative Hassel, had family members in the trucking industry. When they are able to celebrate professionals out in the world, and for any other industry as well, I think it makes a tremendous impact. Mm-hmm. I think it, like I said, if there's one challenge for the professional driver, in addition to all the ones that they would list on a chart, the number one would be being underappreciated.
Sure.
So feeling that love from those that are serving in public office, I think is significant.
Look, we're all human. We all need that appreciation every now and again. Let's talk about workforce. Workforce development. I think every industry across the board is facing workforce shortages and issues and things like that. I know y'all have a campaign and a website, mytruckingfuture.com. Talk about what this campaign is about and the careers that exist in the trucking industry.
Well, it's something that I think is extremely important for any industry, but for ours specifically, the first step there was to take ownership of our own problem, which is attracting high-quality people, high-skilled folks to all these job sectors. Yes, we promote the professional driver and diesel technician through My Trucking Future, but there's diverse job sectors within the trucking industry, but we're not running to the government to say, help us, fix this for us. We took responsibility as an industry within the state of Alabama to say, we understand it's on us to create our own future and to employ great people in Alabama going forward. I mentioned 130,000 that currently work in our industry, and that's going to persist into the future. Alabama is a top 10 trucking state. So My Trucking Future is a way to also humanize the industry, not objectify like you see on billboards and on TV ads, but it's to humanize, because we have wonderful men and women who are providing awesome service in the state. They're extremely passionate about the work that they do for their family, for their company, for their community. And we're telling those stories because there's populations of people out there in our state that when they see that, they're like, that looks like me. You know, I can do this kind of job. And it's not every professional driver or a diesel technician is not for everybody, but it's for a lot of people. And if they don't know how to connect with a high quality training program, with our partnership through the community college system, it's highlighted on there. You can go straight to all the different training options throughout the state through the community college system. There's other training opportunities out there. And then get into a high quality job. High quality people getting into high quality training programs, coaching programs, and then get into high quality jobs, or starting their own high quality business, by the way. That's the kind of stuff we should be incentivizing as a state. It's something that we are embracing as an industry to say it's our job to promote this, you know, even if it takes years for us to see the benefit from it. So mytruckingfuture.com is revolutionary in our industry in the state. There's some other industries that are doing some cool things, but we're catching up to them.
Well, that's good to hear, and I want to have you back because we were talking about this interview, and we're talking about, you know, maybe having a professional truck driver come along, but hey, it turns out they're working.
It was
busy.
my dream to have a couple of really awesome people we work with that are you know, used to be in front of the camera, but they're hauling loads,
they're
so
working.
they're making money,
right.
so they could, you know,
that's
in the future.
Good.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Absolutely, that'd be fun. Well, look, again, Truck Driver Appreciation Week. We've got the website mytruckingfuture.com. I want to encourage folks to go there. And Mark, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Todd.
We'll be right back.
Alabama is home to a diverse and widespread variety of minerals. Chalk, a soft, extremely fine-textured variety of limestone, occurs in the coastal plain section of west central Alabama. Originally formed as the floor of an ancient sea, the chalk can be seen along prominent bluffs on the Tombigbee River. White Bluff is a historic site located in Demopolis, Alabama, which owes its character and natural beauty to the underlying chalk rocks.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week at the same time here on Alabama Public Television. And don't forget, we have Spotlight on Education coming up this Thursday at 8 o'clock here on APT. You won't want to miss this upcoming episode of Spotlight. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.